Приступила к производству компьютеров.
On today's video, I speak to Rob Brennan. Rob is a ring announcer who has autism and epilepsy. I speak to Rob today about what it was like growing up for him, what he feels needs to change around autism, and what he has achieved in his life. Hi guys, and welcome to another video of the MaxiAspie special series, The Autism Connection Season 2. And today on the show, as you can see by the intro, we have Rob Brennan. Obviously, thank you for coming on and sparing your time for me. I suppose my first question to you would be, what is your connection with autism?
So firstly, thank you for inviting me to the show. It's a privilege to be invited to have an interview and everything else. So my first connection with autism is I was a kid basically. I didn't really know too much about it. I was a kid that was getting into trouble quite a lot at school. Went to mainstream school and got picked on, got bullied. I was bullying myself as well at some point. And I think it got to the age of 16, if I remember rightly. I was on holiday with my parents in Tenerife. I had a meltdown. I didn't know what meltdowns were back then. At 16, that everyone just thinks that you're a troublemaker and you're just gonna go out and cause trouble and everything else. And then it was a incident that actually happened between me and my mum. Me and my mum had a bust up that day, and I throttled her, and I tried to drag her to the bottom of the swimming pool. And it was two ex-police officers, that were literally on holiday, and they saw this incident, and they said to my mum and dad, I think you might, when you get back to the UK, get your son tested for autism. And that was the first time, and then I got diagnosed when I was 17. But back then, there wasn't many people about with it. I think I was the first in my area to be to have this issue and everything else. So it was scary. It was definitely like, what's this? So I used to call it, whenever I was back then, I used to call it disease, and I was like, what is this disease? What have I got? Well, I can't read, I can't write, I can't do this, I can't do that. I've had to overcome quite a lot since 17, 18 and everything else. So yeah, it was back then. It was a scary place. Now I'm 37, getting old, and everything else. But yeah, just 16, 17 was, of course, my first time with being known about it and everything else.
I suppose that was quite difficult for you as well. I mean, going through the school system, not I suppose knowing that you had this, and I think as well, it's really key that, like, obviously how we're taught things, you know. So back then you probably felt it was a disease. When I went to school, it was very much a sort of disorder, which is why it's often still called ASD now. I still hear people go, oh, ASD, when really we should be saying ASC, because obviously it's just a condition, you know. It's not, there's nothing.
Yeah, completely agree.
You know, there's nothing wrong with us.
No.
You know, it's just a different way of thinking, and a different way of that it affects us. You know, one of the things I picked up there as well, as you said, you know, it's the first time I knew I had like an issue. Really? You didn't have an issue. You just had a condition which affected you, in
Yeah.
different ways. So I suppose my next question would be then, obviously growing up with the condition, and not necessarily knowing about it in school, how was school for you? How was kind of your school life?
That's a very good question. School life for me was it was a tough one. It was a tough one. But what I remember of school, especially getting to sort of like 16, 17, I was when I first started going to school, I started going to primary school and nursery school, and everything else used to be the last one. Always used to have to catch up. Always have to be the nerd, the nerd of them all, and had one at that time. I had one topic in mind that I was always interested in, and that was history. The weirdest thing. The weirdest thing was history. And I always used to love my history classes. Always used to love my history classes. Then I got to a middle school situation. And then, of course, when I went to middle school, they decided the council and the support workers at the time, social services and my parents, thought at the time that it was a sensible idea to move me to a special needs school. And when I went there and had a look at it and thought, yeah, you know what, it's not prison, it's not nothing like that. And to me, it was like, oh, what do I do here, kind of thing. Then I started finding the real me. I started finding certain things that some autistic people can't do. Of course, that's speaking and everything else. Started finding my own voice, and this is probably where I am today. I was a kind of a big, loud, gobby speaker when I was at school. I was always in charge. Always in charge. I was always hate losing. So when it came to certain things like running or high jump or football or anything like that, I would always have to urge the team to win and everything else. So I was always a leader. I was always a leader in my lifetime of school. I was a goalkeeper. I was always a goalkeeper because back then I was the chunky kid. Back then I was the big kid and I could save quite a lot of goals and everything else. And then I followed that through till I was sort of like 16, 17. And then it was just kind of carried on from there. Then I went to college, and then I had a massive passion for theatre. I still have a massive passion for theatre. My brother has his own theatre company, OCD Productions. He does a show, and he's just about to put Cinderella on for the local pantomime. Whenever I went to a show, I think I was 7. I think I was 7 when I went to my first show. Went to my first show. It was the London Palladium. Probably one of the biggest West End stages you could ever go and watch. And it was Joseph. It was Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat starring Philip Schofield. So this is where me and my brother found the passion of theatre and found the passion of West End stage, basically. And when my brother was growing up, he was going to drama school and everything else. And back then I was helping out with a lot of amateur productions. And I was helping out more backstage. I was more stage management, stage productions and everything else. So then I kind of went into that. Didn't leave school with any GCSEs or anything like that. So I thought to myself, you know what? I've got a passion for theatre. I thought, what can I do with that? Well, I went away after school and followed that passion. And I just carried on volunteering at the time, volunteering for as many theatres as I could, getting this work experience. I probably got a CV as long as my arm. That's purely just volunteering, putting the time in, putting the effort in. And then I was about like 18, 19 and everything else. And of course, when you're 18, 19, you start to drink and you start to do all the socializing things and everything else. It was kind of very, very, it took a back step. But yeah, I mean, my passion was always theatre, was always lights, was always involved in lights, always. I never went to a show. I don't think I ever went to a show and I actually watched the actual show itself. I think I would know the lyrics of the show, know the music of the show, and pretend in my hands I was playing the drums and thinking I was in the drum pit and everything else. But I think it was more the set, more the wow factor of what those people are doing behind stage and everything else. Yeah, so went to college, carried on with that, got a level 1 in food. Well, I wanted to be a chef. The weirdest thing ever, I wanted to be a chef and wanted to travel the world and I had quite high expectations of myself. I wanted to go and travel the world and go on these fantastic cruises I was looking at the same time. And never got there, never seen the cruise till this day, really. So, yeah, so went to college, didn't go to university, didn't have the grades for university. Then I went to, talking about college and university, had the chance to go back to the West End and actually do some supporting roles in DSM and deputy stage manager, as it's called, and stage management and everything else. On a voluntary side of things, somebody gave me an opportunity that I had to come back to Southampton. And of course, I live in Bournemouth. So I had to drive a little way up to Southampton College to go and do my level 1 in stage management. And this was an open course. It was, at that time, I was a lot older than the students were. A lot of the students were just fresh out of college, fresh out of school. So they was 15, they were like 16, 17 at the time. I was probably, 23, 24. Passed my first year, did my first production as DSM. And then the greatest thing ever, I don't think many people can actually sit here and say that the moment that they got the biggest West End call up for any show or any actor or anything like that, it's always your first paid job. My first paid job was at the Mayflower in Southampton. I was backstage crew for Lion King. The Lion King were about to go on tour, and their UK production team were like, well, we need to hire some more staff to come in, and so I was on the get in and the get out team. So I was getting paid for basically moving the scenery on one day and one day out, kind of thing. And I think even to this day, I was like, oh my God, really? So yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that, of course, there's a lot of stuff in this interview that, of course, will tell you, and there's certain things that are going on now and certain things that are not gone on in the past. So yeah, it's just an opportunity now to take up my story. Someone like you that's come to me and said to me, Robert, I want to hear what your story's all about. Yeah, school wasn't great. Was always getting bullied. Was always getting picked on. Like I said earlier, I was a bit of a bully myself.
No, honestly, I think your story, a lot of people will be able to relate to as well. One of the questions I've got then is, I suppose, just take you back to when I suppose you're 16.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did it feel, obviously, with that experience that happened when you're on holiday, and with the diagnosis? How did it eventually feel when you was diagnosed? And also, what was it then like? It's 3-part questions. Sorry about this. But how did it also feel later on in life to then be diagnosed with epilepsy? And what was the sort of how did you find, obviously, managing that later on in life as well?
I've got this condition. I've got autism and I've got epilepsy and everything else. I'm luckily I'm 5 years clear of epilepsy. My epilepsy was due to a lot of drinking and not enough sleep. So that was my problem. That was my issue. Previously, I was diagnosed at 17 with autism, mild autism. So we have to get that one thing right. So I'm not on the spectrum. I am on the spectrum. I am on the spectrum, as we both know, and as this whole kind of country and this whole world know. The spectrum is very big. You've got your high range and you've got your low range. So when I first got diagnosed with the condition I had, I was mid-range. I could speak from the very young age. I could speak from literally from day one. I could speak, I could talk, I could literally do everything. The person you see sitting in front of the screen is the person that I am today. And yeah, it was hard. It was hard because I never knew, especially waking up every day, never knew what was wrong with me. I always said, like I said earlier, I always thought it was a disease. I always wanted to, of course, like this COVID stuff that's going on at the moment, it's injections and therapy and everything else. So I thought there was a way of getting rid of it. So when you're like 16, 17, you think to yourself, what's this? What are they talking about? They don't know who I am. And I was just like, no, this is not right. Why didn't they? There were so many questions. Why couldn't they find this out earlier? Was there a test that I took? Have I done something wrong? Is this my punishment? At the time as well, I believed in a lot of church. I was grown up in church and everything else. And at one point in my life, I thought this was a sign from God giving me this condition, as we call it now. It's given me this disease. How can I get rid of this disease? What can I do to the Lord? What can I do without praising His name? What can I do to make Him realise that I'm not this bad person? I'm not this. I thought I was a criminal. You know what I mean? And this was my way of thinking at that age. And I even remember those stories, and I think this is the only time that anyone will ever get to hear this story going out anywhere at all. I don't think I'll ever want to speak about this again. But it is where I am. It is where I am today, and where I have been over the journey from 16 to 37. With the autism, it was very hard. It was very hard emotionally. It was, like I said, it felt like a disease. It felt like that I was literally like, what have I done wrong? Why can't I do something right? Why can't I do this right? Why am I getting picked on? Why am I? And I just thought it was down to like my behaviour. I just thought it was me growing up as a teenager. You know what I mean? You go out, you do stuff, and you hear all these stories about things that go on these days and everything. Well, I thought it was just me growing up. I thought it was just me thinking, I'm going through this bad patch, you know what I mean? Then I found out when I was 17, I started coming to hitting reality, and I wanted to make a change. And from 17 to this present day, and I'm still making changes to my life even to this present day. Where it all first started, and I'll come on to the epilepsy in a minute, because of course that is part of this journey as well. I wanted to make a change, and I wanted to, when I left school, I always had businesses in my idea head. Never had business experience. So leaving school with no GCSEs, no real career path at all. I was always into the army. Knew I never knew I could get into the army. I wanted to serve the British Army because I liked the army. Never did that and everything else, but I was always interested to it. I always had interests somewhere. Always had a passion for something. never stopped. So yeah, so it was just kind of carried on like that. And then I had this business idea of one day I woke up and I thought to myself, you know what? How much do I love music? And now with the theatre, of course, with the musical theatre and everything else, this kind of comes into the whole kind of like genre where we are at the moment. And I thought, I love musical theatre. What can I do with that? I went away to college and I got this degree, this level 1 degree in stage management that is currently still in use at the moment. So yeah, so I kind of went and did that. I achieved that. You know, um, I was kind of like thinking to myself, where do I want to go next? So I was always wanted to do something with my hands. Always wanted to learn to DJ, learn to mix, and to learn to do other stuff. So, at 16, I became a bedroom DJ. And people don't know out there what bedroom DJs are. So you used to have a pair of decks, and at that time, 16, going on 17, had a pair of vinyl decks that I bought myself. And I started scratching, started doing a bit of mixing, went to a couple of workshops and got an education with certain workshops and everything else. And I thought to myself, what do I do? I went away and did a couple of things and everything else. And I was 17 and a half at this time. And my mum and dad were like, you know what, when you hit 18, what do you want to do with your life? So first thing I want to do is go out and buy my own beer. First thing I ever wanted to do was go to the pub and buy my first beer. That was it. I didn't think about anything else. Then you have this conversation with your parents and everything else, thinking to yourself, right, well, what can you do with your life? You're living on the dole. You're not living the lifestyle that you want to be living. What do you want to do? So there was a lot of talks, a lot of like support from a lot of support networks and everything else. And I said, you know what? I want to be a mobile DJ. I want to go out there and play music for other people. I want to go out and do weddings. I want to go out and do birthday parties. I want to go out and do funerals. I want to go out and do all those kind of like occasions. So when I was 18, I basically, it was my birthday, and mum and dad bought me my first mobile DJ set. I was like, you know what? I've got the perfect name. So I came up with DJ Bobby B. Of course, it's short. It's the version of Rob Brennan. People rhyme with it. So Bobby B came alive. Everyone knew Bobby. Everyone had a massive following on social media, on Twitter, on every single account you can think of. So yeah, then it came to a time where I was having New Year's Eve parties booked. I was being booked all over the place. And then I was getting to 19, 20. Now these were coming the tricky times for me, because then I started experiencing clubbing. And I thought to myself, what can I do? Where can Bobby B go? So at 18, I think it was 18. And I went to this bar with my mum and her friends from work and everything else. And I said to Mum, I'm going to enter this DJ competition. Never thought I'd win. Never thought there would be any prizes coming up from it. So spoke to the director of this tournament. I said, I want to be a club DJ. I want to be the biggest, baddest person you could ever think of and be the biggest thing. They're like, okay, well, next week we've got this DJ competition. You can do the warm up. So I was thinking, went away, had a couple of like little gigs and everything else, and I was getting really popular on the microphone. So this is how the whole story comes to where we are today. But of course, I won't go into today until we get to that part. It was like I had to use my voice to interact with the crowd people that were paying me.
Yeah.
So the only way I could do that was using a microphone. So I went up and did this competition and everything else. And there was two prizes. One was for the best warm-up DJ, and one was for best DJ. Both DJs would move on to the next round. Would move on to, I think it was Liverpool or somewhere like that. Would move on to the next round. And there was a DJ promoter at the time called Jay Ratchet, who is just a legend. He's still in my life now, and always has been. He was an idol. He was kind of the person I would look up to. Always the person I still go to advice for now.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And so I got to meet Jay Ratchet, and at the time he was like, he announced the winners, and my name came up, and I was like, really? I was like, is the bar closed yet? And they were like, no. So of course I went up and had a drink, and then my name got called out again. Mum was dragging me over like anything. Rob, you won best warm-up DJ. So went up and picked my prize up, and went up and of course spoke to the promoter of the event and everything else. I said, what happens now then? What happens now? Oh, we'd like you to go to Liverpool to represent Bournemouth. And I was like, okay. So I travelled up to Liverpool, first time being in Liverpool. And then I lost the warm-up to a London DJ that I still talk to this day. I even talk to the guy to even this day. And he had more experience than what I had, and the judges could feel that. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to come up here for the weekend. We hanged out, you know what I mean? We went to a couple of clubs and everything else. And I thought, you know what? I came back to Bournemouth. Everyone knew in Bournemouth that I'd lost the DJ competition. I was a little bit disheartened. And I got this phone call from Jay, and he was like, Rob, I want you to be my warm-up DJ. It's like, what did you mean? And I was like, I didn't know what he meant at the time. And I was like, confused. He's like, I'm looking for a DJ that can play earlier on in the evening, but warm up the crowd on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Thursday, whatever. And I said, okay, I'll do that. So for the first year, I did that for experience. At the same time, we're still earning money from the mobile business. So of course, I was still having money coming from that. So of course, that was like that was my business. In the end, it came as a business, and this is how this transforms my whole life. And that, and then I got bored of DJing. I got bored of club DJing because I was getting too old for it. So I did mobile DJing from kind of like 17 and a half to I was like 25, 26. And then I went into club DJing at the same time. I was still interested in doing all these amazing gigs.
Mm.
And then I went in from club DJing from 18 right through to 27, 28. And back in those days, at 27, 28, you kind of like going to Ibiza doing Iron Napa, and I had that opportunity, and I went there, and I travelled the globe and travelled the universe with Bobby B and everything else. I mean, when people say to me, I mean, I've had interviews, not like this, but I've had interviews in the past, where people say to me, is Bobby B a character? And I was like, yeah, he's more of a, see what you get in front of you and what you hear through Facebook and the phone and everything else. That's me. That's Rob Brennan. That's who I am. When you ever got to meet Bobby and was ever socializing with him or anything like that, he was the loudest, outgoing person you could ever think. You never thought that he had a condition. You never thought he had anything wrong with him. The world was his oyster. And I think to your question, how did I cope with being diagnosed and everything else? I purely think I got my frustration out through music and through by going out and giving everyone else a good time and becoming this character. With the question you asked me about my autism, I think that's how I came around it. And this was just like, you know what I mean? I'm just going to do the best that I can do. And I don't think to this day I'd be in the position that I am in now. If I didn't do what I did back then, I don't think I'd be in the position where I am now. And of course, with my epilepsy came on late on and really badly in life. My epilepsy came on my 30th birthday. And this story haunts me to this day, really does. I was a massive dart fan, massive PDC player, into my darts, watching darts all the time, used to play it all the time. That used to get my frustration out. When I was having a bad day or having a meltdown or something like that, I would have a picture of something, just a random picture, you know what I mean? And I would chuck darts at it. And I used to have a dartboard at home where my mum and dad used to live. And I used to practice and I used to practice and practice and practice. And I was in Scotland. I was on tour in Scotland and I played darts and we travelled up from Bournemouth, from London Gatwick all the way up to Glasgow. I was a little bit tired, so I was like thinking to myself, oh, can't be bothered, you know what I mean? So I went to bed and I got up and had a shower, went into my bedroom, started getting changed. Next thing I know, so I'm being rushed to hospital. I'm being rushed to Glasgow Hospital, thinking to myself, what the hell has happened? No, you can't fly. It's like, wow, how am I going to get back to Bournemouth? How am I going to get back to London? Luckily, I was flying with someone. And then they decided that I came back to Bournemouth, saw a neurologist, a head specialist, as I call him, a brain surgeon, as I call him, kind of thing. And he said to me, you've got epilepsy. So, oh, God's sake, not another thing. I was like, I looked up one day and I looked up to the sky and I thought, anything else you want to put on me? And it was just like, can anything else hit me? And I thought, what else can hit me? I'm supposed to be this superhero that's pretending to be a superhero, but he's not. He's kind of crumbling up at the same time, and now I've got something else to battle with. So when I found out about it, I thought, oh, here we go again. More fix, more this, more that, more medication, more ending up in hospital, more biting your lip, more bleeds and more. And then suddenly, I stopped drinking. And we found out what the reason was behind it. Where, of course, I started DJing so young. And, of course, back then, alcohol was free for me. Even when I went out clubbing on my own, alcohol was free. And then, you know, I mean, it's not a great thing to put out there and say, this is what's caused your condition. But it's the truth. And that. And people want to hear the truth. People want to know the truth and what can be certain triggers to. I was poisoning my body with alcohol. And at some point it was going to come and hit me. And it did. I stopped. And I still drink now. I still have the off drink like every other weekend and everything else. And of course, with this lockdown, it's pretty harder. You know what I mean? The shops are only up the road, kind of thing for me. And then I slowed down. And then I started having less fits. And then a year went past. And then a year later, another year went past. Then I started having my driving license back. Because, of course, as you know, when you have a fit for the first time in your life, as you know yourself, your driving license gets taken off you. So at that time, that was my ID. Didn't have a passport. So if I wanted to go clubbing or I wanted to go out, of course, you had to prove ID at some point, either a driving license, passport, or whatever a bank card or whatever. And I didn't have nothing like that. I was thinking, oh, I can't go out, can't do this, can't do that. And then I was thinking to myself, right, how can I get over this? I always had a plan to get over the next hurdle. Where can I go? Then 2 years came up, and doctor said to me, Rob, you've been 2 years clear. Apply for your driving license. So I still have a provisional driving license because I'm more nervous about committing a full driving license because I know how hard it is these days. And then I started driving. I started having a little 125 scooter. That's a beast. It's literally a beast. It's just gets me from A to B basically. And then 3 years went past, and then 4 years. Literally to this day, it's 4.5 years. And I always celebrate the anniversary of, if I ever got up to 5 to 6 years, I always celebrate it. And this year is going to be the 5th year. And this year is actually the weirdest thing. It's actually involved in a certain wrestling show that's in August in Liverpool. And it hits on that certain day. And that's how I'm celebrating it. Is hopefully if things go well, is to go to that.
One thing I picked up on is obviously I think it's really important, like sort of hearing your story, and also the sort of the language as well. Like I'm a firm believer. You know, a lot of doctors now are turning down a lot of people because they're not, say, autistic enough. And I always view it as, yes, it is a spectrum, and it's more of an umbrella. And we have so many people now that look at it as you say, like you're either severe or you're mild. And I actually don't really believe that. What I believe is you're either autistic or you're not. And it will affect you differently to how it may affect me, or it may affect someone down the road. Because I always think, well, it's like someone going, well, I'm not pregnant, but I'm a little bit pregnant. And it's almost like, well, actually, no, you're pregnant. You're just 2 months pregnant. You're 3 months pregnant. You know, so
yeah. Well, you're 6 months pregnant. By the way, by the way, babe, you're pregnant now.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's probably something that of course you've been told, you know, throughout your life is, no, you're mildly autistic. I don't know if you prefer to diagnose as mildly autistic. Obviously, it's always down to the person's preference. And
I mean, it's a great. I mean, that alone, the way you were saying about it is a great way of new people seeing how it is, basically. Throughout my lifetime as a DJ and having the support network around me that I had back when I was a kid, when I was 18 and everything else, my mum works in an autistic school, and she works with kids that can't speak, can't walk, can't talk, and then they have to use Macintosh as sign language. And I feel quite lucky, and this is me being me and everything else. I feel quite lucky where I can tell my story. I can tell people how it affects me, how I see things, and that. And it's people like you and me and everything else where for me generally, you've brought my condition to light. You've brought my condition to light because I've always kind of put it to bed. I always kind of put it. I'm one of these people that is, you take me as I am. I'm a very upfront person. I will tell you how it is. If you don't like me, I always have a saying. If you don't like me, there's the door. See you later. That's how I see it. I'm sorry, but that's how I am.
You know what though? Sometimes that is the best way to be, because there's so many people with our condition that feel like they've got to fit and mold themselves into something that they're not. And actually,
you don't.
Yeah, you don't. And I'm a firm believer that actually, you know, the world needs to stop telling autistic people, you know, or anyone with a condition that they need to change. Actually, no, it's the other way around, you know.
Yeah. The world needs to change. The way I believe it is, we have this condition. I'm probably 1 in a million out of this world now that can actually put my story out there and actually go, you know what? I've turned my life around. Now look at me. No, probably people back at school there's probably people at your school, or people at my school, or people back in the day. You're not gonna make it. You're never gonna make it. You've done it. You know you've done it.
Well,
Because you're speaking about it. You're speaking about it. No, you're doing something about it. You're making awareness. You're making people like me come out with the story, come out with it. And it's only because I've been following you. You know what I mean? Since a certain person in the wrestling scene, and of course we'll talk about that later and everything else, it's like that certain person contacted me to contact you, and now with two people, you're what, 24, 25, 26?
24. Don't add the years,
24.
Rob. Jesus.
Where I'm like 37 going on like, you know what I mean, 40, 50s and everything else, you know what I mean? Where to me, you're a baby.
Yeah.
To me, you're a baby. You're still in the prime. To me, I've done it.
Don't feel like that, but, but yeah.
I've done it. And it's people like you that want to help other people and going around and bringing this awareness up and everything else. This is why I'm so privileged of actually you inviting me personally and saying to me, oh, I want to hear your story. I want to hear what's going on in Rob's world. But to me, to you, we are who we are.
Yeah, exactly.
If people can't accept that, I'm sorry, but there's the door.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? It's true. Everyone is gonna think differently, but the key thing is, as you say, I might think it differently to you. You may think it differently to me, but at the end of the day, we still support each other in whatever we do and whatever we think. How did you find leaving school, and how did you find employment? And do you feel like you got the support and help you asked for? And then I'll just follow that on with, as well as, what do you do now as a job?
With leaving school, it was a transition. I was leaving school and I had this idea, like I said, I had this business idea to set myself up and be a mobile DJ. And I did that. And that was a tick in the book that I always wanted to tick.
Just quickly, Rob, did you ever approach other jobs, go to other job interviews, and how did you find that sort of side of it?
I never really had that in my mindset at the time.
Okay.
But then when I was getting older and wanted to, at the time I was living life to the full. So at the time I never thought to myself, you know what I mean? I don't want a normal 9-to-5 job. I don't want to be this person that sits in an office and sits there and just goes, yeah. Never my cup of tea. Done phone calls and everything else. I've done all that. With employers, sometimes I find it tricky, even to this day. I mean, I had my first job when I was 16, and I worked at. I was a cashier. I worked in retail and fast food, and everything else. I stayed there until I was 18 or 19. So I was doing stupid hours. I was getting up at like 5 o'clock in the morning to be at work at 6 o'clock, to start serving breakfast at like 7 o'clock in the morning. I remember one time going into work, and of course at 17 I was a little bit tired. My mum dragged me into work, got me out of bed, and made me my coffee and everything else. And I was serving this customer, and this customer turned around to my manager and said, "Oh, I think your person is on drugs," and just came out with it at 7:30 in the morning. And this customer said to me, "Oh, you don't look with it." I was like, "Mate, you don't look with it. Have you looked at yourself in the mirror?" And I just came out with it, and I got myself into crap over that, big time. Luckily, I didn't get fired, but I got myself into crap over that. Some employers are good, and some employers are bad, as we both know. If we were going to have a discussion on work and everything else, you would have to make a brand new blog. Me and you could talk about that all day long. There are stories I could tell you that are not good, and haven't been good. I've got bullied from colleagues at work. I've got bullied, got picked on. I've got spat on. I don't really want to talk too much about that,
No, that's
but
fine.
it's a subject that something always has to be bring up when you don't really want to talk about it. You always have to. There's always someone that wants to talk about something like that.
That's fine, Rob. Honestly,
I mean, work for me. I mean, I literally, yeah, I love my sports. Always have done. Love my football. I'm a massive football fan. I love my refereeing. I love sending players off. You know what I mean? As a football referee, I've got qualifications in. You know what I mean? When I left school, I didn't have any qualifications. I went to the FA, to the local FA, and said to them, right, I want to become a goalkeeping coach. I passed that. I want to become a football referee. I passed that. I want to come away and be a football coach. Past that. I want to be a level 5 to level 6 referee. Past that. Those 4 things alone, plus my qualification later on with stage management, are the only 4 things that I've actually qualified, but actually passed. And if you think about it, that some people find it hard with reading and writing. I hate it. Some employers are good, some employers are bad. They have come a long time. And I think with where some employers go, they just brush you under the table. I think they do. And they say to you, no. They look at your sheet, they look at that little box right at the bottom, it says, have you got a disability? And you put yes. What is your disability? I'm autistic and epileptic. I guarantee you, every time I put that, I guarantee you, he's went, don't want him. He's a liability. You know what I mean? Don't want him. The jobs that I have had, not just my own and everything else, with the DJing and what I'm doing at the moment, with the projects I've got going on at the moment, working. That was hard work. I was working full-time hours at 17 and a half. I mean, I think you were saying the other day to me that there's only 16% of autistic people that are not in full-time employment. Now,
just to say that again, so yeah, 16% of people with autism in full-time work. So there's only 16%.
It's crazy. And when I heard that, I thought to myself, you know what, if I ever come the MP of this country, get rid of Boris Johnson, get rid of him, I could do a better job than him. Look at me. We could do a better job. We could team up. I would literally change the law in how I would set fines. If I could set fines to employers that turn away every single disability person, I would do. I guarantee you, there would be more people like us.
I mean, the tricky side of employment that you got, I think you're right. I think every employer should be required to have a certain amount of people with conditions and disabilities in their workplace. I think every workplace should be legally required to have autism training, condition disability training, and yeah, I mean, it is shocking. And the thing is, as well, is there's no protection before you get the job of that discrimination. So you can go to a job interview and be discriminated, and you might not even know that you're being discriminated against because of what you've got.
Yeah.
I'll just ask you, how do you, what do you do now? And if you could explain autism to a neurotypical person, so someone that's not got any conditions, how would you explain it?
So what I do now is I'm very proud. I'm a ring announcer. So I cover everything from boxing to wrestling to events to hosting to everything. So basically how it came about was, like I said, the DJing world, I had to use my voice, I had to use it somehow. 2019, I made contact with a friend of mine who is a professional MC, was a professional ring announcer, does white collar shows and bare knuckle shows, and has been on TV quite a bit and everything else. So he gave me some tips and advice on how to protect my voice and everything else. And I just started doing videos, started doing pre-recordings, started doing promo sets. An idea at first was an idea to bring a brand, a company, and everything else, to make it as a full-time job, to make it a full-time commission job. It wasn't going to be just sit on your bum all day long and everything else. So then 2020 came in. I had one show booked as an assistant MC, and I came out and did my thing. Had two belts, and did a really good job. Got it filmed, got it some pictures as well. So there was a couple of pictures with me sat in the ring and me doing what I do. And then somebody turned around to me and said, well, you know what? Why don't you try the amateurs? And now the amateurs are amateur boxers that give up their time. They train hard, and they basically kind of don't make a lot of money at shows, but you still want to make it a show. You still want to make a show. So our season ran through September to April. So of course 2020 was a weird year for me, completely weird for me. Started the business at the beginning of the year, did the Facebook, did the Twitter, did the Instagram, set business cards up. I still have business cards waiting to be printed. So they've not even been printed. They're still waiting to be printed. So that's what I do at the moment. It's a full-time passion, so a full-time commitment. And on the side at the moment, I'm actually proud to announce well, you'll be the first people to hear about this. I'm actually doing a photography course that will take a lot of time, a lot of effort. Literally just signed up to it. It's an online course to do. Hopefully, I have a 5-year to 6-year plan to make that into a wedding and event photography business. So in the long run, I will be doubling up on business. I will have events and of course ring announcing work coming in, and of course then I have the weddings and everything else. So that's the announcement today, and I thought no better place to put that was literally on here. So the business name for that is going to be Robert Brennan Photography. So nothing's really come out on Facebook at the moment. At the moment, I don't know if people do see it. It's under Pit Stop Photography. So Pit Stop Photography is a fun page, basically, where I do a bit of sport photography, have done a bit of sport photography in the past. So that's that.
If you could change one thing about the understanding of autism, what would it be?
I probably would do something like you. Probably go out there and speak about it. Really talking about it and saying to somebody, I'm a firm believer in don't go and look it up on the internet, because there are so many different sites out there these days that people will not go and people just go on Google and go, you know what is autism? How do I find this out? What's this? What's that? Best way of doing that is speaking to the people them directly. People like yourself, me, parents, teachers, people like that. That would be my best way. Would be to go out there as a businessman, go out there and promote it and put events on.
I think with that, Rob, as well, I think it's a lovely message to end on. Is the key to understanding autism is just communicating and talking about it. So as I say, thank you for coming on, Rob, as well, and thank you ever so much.
No problem. It's all privileges, all mine.